Hello, how's everyone doing today? I'm glad you joined us. If you have been following us for the past 3 weeks, I hope you've been enjoying it. My name is Christopher Harris, and I am the pastor here at Grains of Sand Ministries, where we meet Sundays between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Over at 3711 Bells Lane. Okay, we do meet in person, and we also record it. But along with our meeting, what we do, we are a bit different. We do focus on the first 30 minutes. It's where I'll share some thoughts, and then the next 30 minutes, we will do Q&A and dialogue. We strongly encourage that here. We invite questions. We love them. It shows us that people are observing something and growing. So just be encouraged today that there is no question that is not only too hard for God, but we can discover those together. If we don't know, we'll find those out. But what I've been teaching on for the last 3 weeks, this will be the third week of it, and that is how we see God. How we see God is very important, because how you understand how God is colors your perspective about everything else in life. I mean, how you expect God to be will determine your output in life and what you do. You'd be surprised at how many people, when they think of God, that they think of God like God is a dictator, ruling tyrant that is ready to just swat you and knock you out of the picture at the drop of a hat, or at the slightest bit of movement or something that you went off on. It could be a lot of things. We've even got it rolled into the insurance language. In insurance language, when a house gets hit by weather of any kind that brings a significant amount of damage to it or to that area, they have a phrase for that, and they call it an act of God. So even our own culture has been conditioned to see God from a perspective and a way that is usually something more of a judge than it is as a father, a loving father, a loving parent. Okay? So understand too, is that when we talk about Father here, let me bring some context to this, okay? In Hebraic language, in Jewish language, how whenever they would speak something, they would speak something based on the current culture of their understanding. So for them, a name wasn't simply a label that you put on someone. A name involved functionality. The name, listen, watch this. It says in Proverbs 22 that a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. Why? Because for them, a name was like your social security number of today. Okay, just like we have social security number and we have what we call the DNA strand, and those things will tell you pretty much a lot about that person. You'll learn a lot by the social security, but by the DNA will tell you the makeup of that person. They have the personality built into that person. Everything, the makeup about that person is rooted within the DNA. Do you understand that the physical components of your body is actually an appendage to the spirit? Isn't that an interesting thing, that we can take things that are things we can't necessarily see, and they produce something that we can see? Okay. So they would focus on the functionality of it. Names indicated functionality. So the intent was, what is this function? What is this supposed to work like? And when we talk about functionality, what we're talking about is this. What was in the mind of the Creator at the original design? See, when something is created, like the light bulb, when Thomas Edison discovered that, There were many attempts that he went through to perfect what we have today, the idea and of the light bulb in getting light. And I know there may be some more parts to that, just if we really want to get technical, but I'm just giving a generic overview here, so stick with me. So when Thomas Edison would go and produce the idea for the light bulb, okay, there were many different things that he went through before he got to the perfecting stage of making it to where what was a thought in his mind now became a reality. The Wright brothers discovering how to overcome gravity with enough force of lift so that we can have a whole thing that flies. Discovering flight. Do you realize that before that time, it was not heard of that something could be flying in the air? But yet somebody got an idea and broke the limitation. Because the limitation at one point for travel may have been by foot, and then by animal, and then after by animal, by motorized vehicle. From motorized vehicle, now we go to flight. So each time there was a limitation broke, and not to get off course, but let's move back here, is that it is still rooted and based on functionality. When the Wright brothers had the idea for flight, they were looking at how is this going to function? How is this going to work? What are we going to have to do to make this a reality? And so they would go through a process. And as they went through that process, still with the idea in the mind, and you got to ask yourself a question. What was it that drove each of these individuals that we have and benefit from today? We benefit from certain breathing apparatuses where people can breathe in certain conditions, breathe underwater. Do you realize that wasn't always a thing? But then somebody had an idea and they perfected that thing. They worked on that after many different times experimenting, and listen, they had to become a part of the process. See, when Thomas Edison had the idea for the light bulb, he had to become a part of the process. It wasn't enough for him to just look at an idea and think of an idea and have an idea and get an idea. He had to take and he had to embody that idea. He had to become that idea. Here's how I know that, hey, each one of these people that we have today, if you think of anything that we enjoy as a benefit today, it was an idea in the mind of someone at one point. It was a problem that we needed a solution to at some point. And somebody saw that there was a challenge in an area, there was a problem over here in this area, let's bring a solution to it. We want to communicate better, so let's send mail. Somebody said, let's go even further. Let's get phones. And I know there's a lot in between that, but stay with me. I'm making a point here. Do you understand that in each person that invented something, they created something, they broke the barrier and limitation of what we thought before there was electricity for stoves. We thought this is the best thing ever. But then somebody broke that limitation. And there was a challenge, and there was a trial period at one point where they were working out the bugs and the kinks of everything. And eventually, as they continued to hammer out on their craft, it was perfected. Sometimes somebody else would pick up that idea after one person stopped with it, and they would go on and perfect what was the original design, but build upon that thing. What am I saying here? Is that in each instance, if they would have quit and given up on that, we wouldn't have that today. So they didn't quit on it. They didn't give up on it. They stayed focused. They didn't even think of destroying, completely eradicating what they did. Imagine what would have happened if Thomas Edison would have threw his hands up and said, you know what? I'm done with this. This will never work. I'm just going to move on. Somebody might have found his plans in the trash. Someone might have said, what is this? Somebody might have said, you know what? I think this can work. And they would move on, and we would still have what we have today. Might not have been named Thomas Edison, might have been named someone else. But here's the point I'm making. Likewise, that each creator did not quit and give up on the idea that they had to solve that problem. They didn't give up on what they had created. They didn't trash and throw away what they had created. Likewise, God does not trash you. God does not trash God's creation. Now, God is a title. I'm gonna go back to my words here, functionality, okay? When I say Father, think functionality. What is the function of a father? The first thing, when you look up father, by definition, okay, father as a, you hear it in certain workplaces like this person has been grandfathered in to XYZ plan. What does that mean? That means that they were already doing this from the beginning of that. So since they have this from the beginning, they get to keep that, okay? Father also means place of origin. Let me just say this, okay? Is that within the Father is the seed that goes in, okay, you know the rest, all right, becomes one with the egg, all right, and then you have a child, all right? Now, I'm just giving basics of things so we can draw some understanding, okay? Don't go off left side on me here, right side on me, and just kind of, stick with me, okay? So this is about functionality. Father is place of origin that you came from. Place of origin. This is your origin of beginnings. Where did you begin from? This is what this is talking about. And so, with that, okay, what we are talking about today is still continuing on. What is God like? How do we understand how God is like? God is a title, okay, but God is Father, place of origin, the origin and beginning of all life, of all things, okay? What will we call that? That origin place is spirit. John chapter 4, Jesus says that God is spirit. So what you have to understand, God is spirit. Your origin place is spirit. How do I know this? Someone dies, heart quits beating, something, and then their body begins to decay. How? If nothing physically was removed out of place, what happened? Something changed to cause the animation of that person to no longer exist. It's called their spirit is no longer vacant on the premises. Because as a spirit, you as a spirit, your origin place is from the chief almighty spirit, chief spirit, who is Yahweh Elohim. Now this is just a name here. And not just a name, but is the name of the chief spirit, of the Spirit of God. When I say chief spirit, I'm talking about the alpha spirit of all creation, the beginning point of all creation. It's like water. When water is created and made from two different gases. You can't see them. You may or may not be able to smell them. And we have to build containers to contain them. We as an individual can't reach out and just grab a hold and hold oxygen, like, do it. But you know what the craziest thing is? Watch this. Trees, they're not built to just hold oxygen either. They're built to consume the oxygen. See, you have oxygen in your blood. See, we're made to take in the oxygen. We are made as beings that consume the oxygen. We ingest it. And by that, we are able to use it as well to animate our bodies, to move around. See, when I have a container that we've built to hold it, that's all it's capable of, is holding it. I can build a container that can hold the oxygen or that can hold the hydrogen. But it will only do that, hold it. It's not going to be able to ingest it. It won't become animated by it. Why? Because it wasn't made with the right stuff. It's not made like that to do that. It's like there are different fishes that belong in different types of water. Different animals belong in different climates, okay? Because they're made for that. We don't want to see a polar bear in the tropical areas. It's not where they belong, because they are made and built to be in extreme temperatures of cold weather. That's why it's called a polar bear. Fish are made to be in water. Okay. Their main source of habitat for them. Land animals are not. You know, they might get in the water, but don't live in it to do that. Okay, let me continue because I'm just making a point. But the point is this, that you are spirit and you have come from God, okay? From the Father. Place of origin is the Spirit of God. But then you have to ask, what is God like? What exactly is God like? Because you may be saying, Pastor Chris, I've heard so many different things about how God is. I don't know what to believe about God. Some may listen to this and say, well, I don't believe God at all. But if you're listening to this, you are at least interested and curious about it. So, again, what my responsibility is to paint a picture of how God actually is. But to do this, we have to begin to look at what person has revealed the nature of God in a manner that we can follow. That person, as spoiler alert, I want to submit to you, is Jesus the Christ. I say the Christ because Christ was not Jesus's last name. Christ was a title that Jesus functioned through. It was, in Hebrew, he would have been Messiah or the Messiah, and who they hailed as a king specifically to the Jews. The Christ is the Greek name of Messiah, and it means the anointed one. The one that is anointed. The one, anointing means to smear on and to paint. Okay? And how well, watch this, how well you see God, how clear and however you see God will determine your output in life. Let me read something to you. In Colossians chapter 1, verse 9, it says this, and so from the day we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled, watch that, be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. Be filled with the knowledge of his will. Now, that word knowledge right there actually is experiential knowledge. But did you know, in order for something to actually be an experience, it has to have two components to it. Without these two, you can't have one without the other. It takes two to make one. If I'm going to make Kool-Aid, I'm going to have water, I'm going to have sugar, and I'm going to have the package of Kool-Aid in order for it to actually be that. It takes a pulling together of a few things in order to make it one that we need it to be. And so what experience is experience is the child of observation and participation. You can't have experience without having observation, where you observed it, and we're going to go over that, and participation. But in order, now what you got to understand is this is not spectating. There's a difference. See, when people go to ball games, like we've been to baseball games and we've been to basketball games, we were spectating the game. In other words, we were on the sides watching the game. We were in the stands watching it without watch this, without nothing that said that we're going to get out on that team and play. Okay? Because we just came to watch the game. We're not there to play the game. So we're going to watch the game. We're going to spectate the game. Okay? But then if we're going to participate in the game, there's a process we have to go through to even get on the team, to say that you are a part of the team. Okay? And this is what we're going to deal with today. What is this process of what it looks like to experience God? Because there is actually a little bit of a process. And when I say process, listen, I'm not talking about I guess almost I am, but I don't want you to get hung up on a formula. I want you to catch the nature of this, okay? So watch this. So if you're going to experience God, there's a couple of things that are involved. Observation, participation. You observe with the intent to participate and get involved. But you participate also to make it a practice, a profession, a consistent lifestyle. But before we observe, we have to first hear. Hearing is important. Hearing the good news. You have to hear. There's a few restaurants in town that I've told some people about. And because they know me, because of the relationship that they have with me, they took me at my word and at least went to check it out. They observed it by looking at their menu online, looking at the photos of the restaurant that I told them about. They looked at the photos of the food. And then that was enough to where that, coupled with knowing me, trusting me, and then taking me up on my word to go do it now. As they went to go to the restaurant, they found out that, wow, this food really is good. And several people continue to go back. Now, sometimes you tell somebody about something that may not be their cup of tea, and that's okay. But the point is, they observed because they went, and they went because they heard. So before you can observe, you first have to hear. Okay. Romans 10. Let me go there. Verse 14. Okay. Now, what you have to understand here in Romans 10, the Apostle Paul is speaking about and to the Jews. How do we know this? In verse 1, the Apostle Paul starts, brothers, my heart's desire and prayer to God for them, Israel, is that they may be saved. For I bear them witness that they have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. For being ignorant of the righteousness of God and seeking to establish their own, they did not submit to God's righteousness. Do you realize that in order for you to walk in the righteousness of God, you have to submit to the righteousness of God while abandoning your own establishment of righteousness? What do I mean by that? What does this mean by that? Okay. First of all, true submittance. Hear me. True submitting first begins in agreement. Now, I say that and you have to take it with a grain of salt, because some of you may be thinking, what about my 2-year-old child do? I just not do it if she doesn't agree with me? No. It says foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction drives it far from them. In other words, children, I ain't talking about beat your child. I'm talking about, listen to me. When you're a child or an infant at something, when you're new at something, you need training to perfect it and get it right. Once you've trained and you've perfected it and you've gotten it right, now we can enter into a place where we can agree. If we are going to agree, okay, watch this now. It works better. The other night, my sons and I tell us a quick story. We were coming out of Myers, and as we were coming out, there was a car that was in the entrance of this drive to get into this gas station that, we were coming out, and this is still kind of in the parking lot. Well, as we're coming out, their car was stopped there with their flashers on because they had ran out of gas. Just happened to be a single mom, had 3 kids, and I had my grandson with me and my youngest son. And I pulled over and I said, come on, let's go. We're gonna push. And as we begin to push, it's a lot easier to push a car when we're all pushing together in agreement on the same cue with the same effort and strength. Now, because my grandson and my son didn't exercise at first the same amount exertive strength, and with my grandson, nor would I expect him to exert the same strength as me because I'm bigger than he is, okay? But here's my point I'm making with that, is as exerting the same amount of strength to the next, okay, this is what it means on moving together. Do you know that Elohim, okay, the name Elohim, it comes from, the context of that is from an ox and a staff. Ox meaning strength. Staff is shepherd, leading. And what they would do, this is what they would actually do this. They would take a mature adult oxen that had been used to carrying the yoke they would use to plow their fields. That adult mature oxen knew the way to go, knew exactly how everything needed to be done. And when they would want to train the younger oxen, they would take the younger oxen and yoke the younger oxen to the older mature oxen. Why? Because that younger oxen did not know. They didn't know the pathway of what it meant and how to plow the ground in the garden so the seed could get planted. Are you following me? The younger oxen did not know anything, so they had to be trained. But how would they do that in training them to do what this older mature oxen had perfected? The older mature oxen was a lot stronger, knew the route, knew the area, and would take the younger oxen that was yoked to them, and that older mature oxen would continue on the same path. The younger oxen may try to wiggle and move to go another direction in the beginning, but eventually by training, it would learn the intent of the older oxen, that the older oxen was gonna go this way. Do you understand that they did not communicate? The older oxen and the younger oxen weren't talking to each other like Toy Story or like Dr. Dolittle. Hey, you really need to go this way. No, they learned by instinct and intent. They knew the intent. The younger oxen would learn the intent of the older ox, where the older mature ox was going, which direction they were turning. They were stopping and going here. They were turning and going there. They were plowing with this amount of force. They were plowing with that amount of force. Okay, just using generic examples here. But this is also Elohim, where we get the name Elohim. Elohim means supreme one of authority and power. Yahweh Elohim means self-existent one of supreme authority and power. And the supreme authoritative and power, that one is the older, mature ox, while we are the younger, inexperienced ox, but yet we're yoked in the same yoke together. Okay, let me keep reading here. Verse 4, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. What do I mean by righteousness? Righteousness is also justice, okay? And justice is also righteousness. I'm just giving you the context of scripture here. So if we have justice, it's also speaking to righteousness. It's speaking to equity. What's equitable over here for this one may not be equitable over here for that one. What do I mean by that? Okay, here we go. I may be able to swim okay, but a dolphin will outswim me every day of the week without even trying. Why? Because the dolphin is made for that. If I'm going to be anything even close to even try to match for it to be fair in a race, and even at that, I'm gonna have a very, very fast speedboat or jet ski. And even then, I may not make it, because dolphins will keep up with you while you're moving, jumping out of the water. Those jokers are quick. Now, here's my point in this, okay? Righteousness is what is equitable, okay? And righteousness is also justice. Okay, so let me move on down here. In verse 14, it says this, talking about hearing. Let me get back here. How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him of whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? Verse 15, and how are they to preach unless they are sent? Right there, I need you to see something, sent. There's where we get apostle from. It is one that is sent. How are what the Apostle Paul is saying, how are they apostolized? How are they to walk in the same function as an apostle, one that is sent? Do you know that an apostle was not a new word and term for them? It was a commonplace term. An apostle would have been a governmental official, actually, of that time and day, that was sent on a mission to represent the likes and interests of the kingdom they came from. It's also ambassador. An apostle is, well, we'll stick there because there's a lot more to that. Okay. All right. How beautiful, as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. But they have not all obeyed the gospel, for Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed what he has heard from us? Who has believed the report of the Lord, what they have heard from us? Who has believed it? Obeying the gospel, obeying the good news is believing the good news. Now, what I'm going to tell you is probably going to sound a bit different than the traditional thing of what the gospel is. But in presenting the gospel, you should always see, watch this. Literally, you should see how beautiful God always has been. If your perspective of God doesn't shift at some point with continually hearing the actual good news, and I'm going to tell you what it is. The good news has to do with a revelation, you seeing simply how loving and how good and how kind God always has been. Let me just say this. Hold on a minute. Because Jesus said, let me go in John real quick, 14, verse 9. This is after Philip, starting verse 8. Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us. Jesus said to him, have I been with you so long? Here's where Philip had to hear. This is how Philip had to hear. Philip had to hear what the Spirit was saying when Jesus was saying this, because Philip was seeing a physical person. And that physical person was the embodiment of the Lord Most High. He had to see this. He had to hear it. He had to understand it. He had to believe it. Jesus said to him, believe this. Watch this. Have I been with you so long and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me, here it comes. Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Jesus was saying, if you have seen me, you have seen what the Father looks like. You have seen what the God of the universe. See, here's the understanding. In the Old Testament, what we see is we see a picture of writers that are writing about the God of the universe, the creator of the universe, and they have no real reference point. They are trying to understand God by looking at God through like a curtain. It's like trying to see, like right here, you can see my arms a bit lighter, because this part's exposed to the sun. But here's the thing, with my shirt covering it, but if you didn't know that now that I showed you, but with my shirt covering that, you may assume it, but you don't really know. You don't know I might tan. For real. But with my shirt in the way, all you see is a form of my arm, but you don't see the details of it behind this that's covering it. And before Jesus showed up, everything before Jesus was a cover. They could present the form of God, but they couldn't show you what God was like. The law presents a form of God, but the law can't tell you what God is like. The law can give an outline of God, but the law cannot tell you the definitive version. This is what God's like. See, if my whole body was covered up in a blue, like my blue shirt, if I came in and had a whole blue outfit, you would see a form of a person. Yeah, that's a person, but you wouldn't know who it actually is. You might know when I started speaking now, but you get what I'm saying. You would not be able to pull the definitiveness. Let me say this. If you can imagine my entire body from fingertips to toes, head to toe, every part of me covered, you wouldn't even know what color I was. You wouldn't know the color of my skin. Why? Because this here, there is a veil and a cover that prohibits you from seeing the definitive, the 2.0 version of Chris Harris. My wife sees the 2.0 version of Chris Harris. That's it. That's it. All right. So watch this. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. In Hebrews 1. Stick with me here. Hebrews 1, it says this. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he has appointed the heir of all things, through whom he also created the world. Watch what it says about Jesus. Jesus is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. So Jesus is the expressive image of God. Jesus is the expressive nature of the Father. If you want to know how, we just read this. Now there's way more places we could get into, but just those two right there will get you started. Jesus said, anything you've seen in me is what you will see in the Father. And now, watch this now. Jesus carried power on heaven and in earth. Jesus told Peter, when they came to arrest Jesus, Peter swung out with his sword and chopped off a guy's ear. Now, Peter wasn't aiming for the ear saying, I'll take you a piece at a time. No, Peter was aiming for the guy's head. The man moved, and that's just all he got was an ear. You need to understand that part. That's just all Peter got was an ear. But the point is this, Jesus said, Peter, put up your sword. Do you not know that I can call legions of angels? Jesus was saying, I can call some angels, they'll come down here and level the place. That's what Jesus was saying. So Jesus had the ability to do this. Must have had the ability to turn stones into bread. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been tempted with it. Go ahead and do this. You realize that's how temptation works. Temptation is never about something that you can't do. It's about something that you have the power within your grasp to do. And it's at the right time and to actually do that. You don't know why I'm even say that. Or should we even go into that? Check yourself on that one. Because if you're tempted with something, it's something that is in your power to do, which means you may be trying and attempting to do something that you were not made for, that did not come from your place of origin. This is not who you are. Are you beginning to catch what the good news is? If you hadn't, let me keep going here and make it a little bit clearer for you. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. If you've seen the works in me, you've seen what the Father is. I'm talking about this kind, good God. Well, Jesus never burned up anybody and never drowned anybody. That's all I'm gonna say right now. Gotta stay on target. Okay. So let me go back here to John. That if you've seen Jesus, Jesus said, you have seen the Father. So we're at Romans 10. When it says, well, we're at Romans 10. Excuse me, let me go back. The verse we were on, it says they have not all obeyed the gospel. What are we obeying the gospel? What does it mean? It tells you, for Isaiah says, who has believed? So obeying the gospel is about believing. How you see something determines what you believe. We'll say that again. How you perceive something will determine the what of you believing. Let me say it one more time. How you see something, how you perceive it, will determine what it is that you believe. Let me give you an example. Now, all my grandkids are old enough now, I couldn't do this with them, but if I were to put on a Halloween mask of some sort, like we used to have one, it was the Incredible Hulk Halloween mask, okay? My grandson had it, and I put it over my face one day playing with him. Well, at that time, his sister was there too, and she was much younger than him. Well, he saw me and was just laughing. She saw me and she was terrified. Now, he knew it was me, and she saw monster, but it was me. Well, because of his maturity, he could see me for who I really was. His sister saw the same person, but because of her immaturity, she didn't see me for who I really was. In her immaturity, watch this now, she saw me through what her own fear projected out against me. And that is what caused her to turn away from me, run from me, and be scared of me. She projected something on me that was not true. And out of that, she turned and began to ignore me. I want to get away from this person. This is a monster. He's going to get me. Help me, please. And did not know it is really me. But my other one, my grandson, who's older, his maturity allowed him to see past this mask to say, Papa, that's you. Ha, ha, ha. Now, all my grandkids are older. Can't do that with them now. They can see, oh, Papa, that's you. Here's the point. The point I'm saying is this: how you see God determines what you believe about God and determines what you believe in life. Do you catch that? How are you seeing God? How do you perceive God? Because however you see and perceive God, that is what you believe about God. That is what it means to obey the gospel. If you're going to obey the good news today, it would be, how do you see God? Do you see God outside of seeing anything that Jesus walked in, talked in, lived in, spoke in? If you can't see it in Jesus, you won't see it in the Father, your place of origin. Your place of origin can be summed up by looking at the life of Jesus. It says in verse 17, so then faith comes by hearing, and hearing from the word, here it comes, of the Christ. The name that Jesus carried, the nature that Jesus carried, how Jesus walked this out. All right. That's all I have time for today. I've gone quite a bit over my time. But what we'll do next week, we'll pick back up, and what we'll do is we will dive into the very fibers of the nature of God. And we're going to take these things apart from this is how God is like. And we're going to do it in an ABC fashion, very simple and broke down. Hopefully this was simple today. Hopefully you got something. Listen, we are here from 9 to 10 at 3711 Bells Lane, Grains of Sand Ministry. I am Pastor Chris Harris, and we do invite you in person. We also welcome and thank you for being with us by our video. Even though this is recorded, we are changing that up a bit at some point as we continue to move forward. So have a great day. We bless you. And remember, grains of sand. Psalms 139, okay? It says, the thoughts of God are more in number than all the sands on the shores of the beaches in the world. And guess what? Those thoughts that God has towards you, they are good thoughts. They are Jesus' thoughts. They're not thoughts to kill you. They are thoughts to bless you. So, that's all I have time for today. Have a great day. Know that you're loved. Know that there is no separation between you and God. Okay? Amen. Bless you. Take care. We'll see you next week.